Radek Sikorski's speech at the United Nations serves as a sharp indictment of Russia's actions in Ukraine, particularly its treatment of Ukrainian civilians and children. And as Minister of Foreign Affairs in Poland, Sikorski has used his platform to draw historical parallels, condemn Russian aggression, and challenge the Kremlin's narrative. His words are significant in the context of Russia's current threats, including the potential nuclear escalation against Western cities like London. Sikorski, who is, he's such an impressive man. I remember him when he was much, much younger, and we worked together raising money for medical aid for Poland, among other things. But I also remember him as a very entertaining, very erudite individual with a very interesting past. He directly addresses the Russian ambassador's claims, labeling them as lies. One of the most striking moments in his speech is when he described the devastation he witnessed in Lviv, where a family was killed by a Russian missile far from any military target. He juxtaposes the tragic reality in Ukraine with the ambassador's misrepresentation, emphasizing the Russian ambassador claims that Russia doesn't bomb civilian targets. That's a second lie. His personal account of visiting a site where innocent civilians were killed by Russian missiles puts into stark contrast the falsehoods promoted by Russia. My friend Kaelan Robertson has just been to Kherson, where anything that's moving, any person that's moving, is targeted by a Russian drone. And we've had many conversations. And in fact, on one or two occasions, I've heard the drones. I've seen Kaelan rush for cover. Sikorski is speaking the truth. Sikorski's speech, goes further by pointing to Russia's systematic abduction and forced assimilation of Ukrainian children, for which Putin has been accused of war crimes. He draws a chilling parallel between this and Nazi practices during World War II, particularly referencing the Nazi Germanization of Polish and Soviet children. How does what you are doing to Ukrainian children, how does what you're doing to Ukrainian kidnapped children differ from what German Nazis did to your children and ours? He asks. This comparison reinforces the historical resonance of the atrocities being committed and challenges Russia's absurd labeling of Ukrainian government as Nazis. His condemnation of Putin's regime is tied to the broader narrative of historical memory. Sikorski lives just kilometers away from the site of a Nazi filtration camp where children from Poland and the Soviet Union were imprisoned and killed, providing an emotional gravity to his remarks. The forced deportations of Ukrainian children to Russia, where they were subjected to patriotic education and adoption by Russian families, echo the darkest periods of 20th century European history. And as Sikorski noted, Putin's government has justified these abductions as a humanitarian effort, claiming these children were orphans. Another lie, he stated firmly, highlighting independent reports that show many of these children were forcibly separated from their parents. Sikorski's words are a potent reminder that these acts constitute war crimes, with the International Criminal Court having issued a warrant for Putin in 2022. In parallel to these grim realities, the context of nuclear threats looms large. Russian state media, particularly on platforms like Telegram, has circulated videos simulating a nuclear attack on London. These serve as stark warnings from Russia to Western nations about the dangers of intervening in Ukraine. And this propaganda is an attempt to instill fear and deter NATO countries from further supporting Ukraine's military efforts. The simulation featuring a nuclear detonation over Westminster is designed to demonstrate the devastating potential of Russia's arsenal, with predictions of hundreds of thousands of casualties. The threat of nuclear escalation is part of a broader strategy by Putin to intimidate the West. As Sikorski's speech reminds the world, these threats are grounded in a regime willing to commit atrocities and manipulate historical narratives to justify its actions. The link between Putin's Russia and the Nazis, while bold, is both relevant and apposite, especially given the ongoing devastation Ukraine faces from Russian bombardment on a daily, hourly basis. In Kherson, it's not even daily or hourly, it's by the minute. In fact, they've given up using air raid sirens. You can hear the bombs going off every 3 or 4 minutes. Sikorski poses a powerful question to the Russian regime. How many Russian officials have adopted stolen Ukrainian children following, as reported by the BBC, the example of Sergei Mironov? His query calls attention to the personal involvement of Russia's elite in these war crimes and underscores the systemic nature of the atrocities being committed. So as the spectre of nuclear conflict hangs over Europe, peddled by Putin's finger on the button, the message is clear. The world must confront these threats with clarity and moral resolve. And Sikorski's speech at the United Nations serves as a reminder that Russia's aggression is not just an attack on Ukraine, but an affront to the principles of human dignity and international law.